Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome from me too. My name is Andreas Archut. I'm the Public Information Officer of the university, so it's my job to speak out loud for the university. I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit difficult for me today because I'm about to lose my voice. I caught a cold, so please excuse if you don't understand every word I say. It's just because of the cold. I'm very happy to introduce to you these three people who have made their way here to talk with each other and, of course, with you all about international doctorates and all the questions that you had. We collected some of your questions in advance and we put them into these tiny cards here. I welcome very much the rector of the University of Bonn, Professor Michael Hoch. And
nice to meet you.
Also, I say hi to Antje Wegner. She has come to us from the Institute of Research Information and Quality Assurance. And finally, welcome to Peter Sedlacek. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for the pronunciation. He's junior professor of economics here at the University of Bonn. Well, to start with the rector of the university, our boss, I'd like to introduce him to you if you don't know him already. This might also be due to the fact that he has already started his doctorate, his rectorate, his doctorate.
Not bad.
in May this year. He's a biologist. He's been a professor of developmental biology for 16 years now at the University of Bonn, and he became rector just this year. He is maybe known to many of you who are in the natural sciences because he's the founder of the Limes Institute here in Bonn. And now he's our rector, and yeah, the first question I should ask to him, is here on my card, is how important do you think is the integration of international researchers into German academic life? I mean, he's already given one answer to this question. He's here now for you, and he's taking his time, his precious time, to talk to you and be here and discuss with you, and that's also a good answer. But I guess, Professor Hoch, you have some more answers for us as well.
So, hello, everybody. So, I'd like to welcome in particular one of my PhD students, so Mirko, he's in the back. Mirko, he's working on zebrafish. So if you have questions, you know, about me, how I am really, you know, so please ask Mirko, you know. So what is interesting, also why is it important to have international people in the university, and you can break it down to the laboratory or to the institute? Well, of course, because, you know, science is very much dependent on the exchange of ideas, and not only on the exchange of ideas, but on the exchange of people. We need basically, since knowledge is global, we need inputs, you know, for our own research from all different parts of the world. And so in my own laboratory, I can say that, you know, it's just a pleasure to have people coming from different parts of the world watching soccer games, you know. So Mirko is Italian, so we have sometimes little, you know, discussions. You know, Italy is something which, you know, often for the Germans has become an obstacle, if you want. But it's basically meeting other people, meeting, you know, people representing other cultures. You know, I mean, this is just also important for the development of our own personalities, of the personalities of people in my laboratory, and also of my personality, as I can say, because I also have been a PhD student at one point, you know. So that was very important. And on the level of the colleagues, and so maybe my colleague from the economics will say, may say the same thing. It's also a pleasure to then meet colleagues who have been raised in a different academic system, because they have a different attitude of how teaching, for example, is performed. Because the way Germans tend to do the teaching, you may know this, is a different way than for example, Americans would do the teaching. And so we profit also on the side of the colleagues to have other inputs when we discuss about how teaching could be in the future also for the German students. So altogether, I think that it's very, very beneficial to have people from foreign countries in our universities.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoch. Antje Wegner, you are a researcher at the Institute for Research Information and Quality Assurance. You just carried out a study on international researchers at German higher education institutions. For the study, you asked 1,500 international researchers why they came to Germany, why they choose their university, and so on and so on. So, what's the bottom line of your study? What's the motivation that drives international researchers to come to Germany?
Okay, I have to be a little bit careful because the study is not published yet, so that's a problem. But in general, our study reflects what many other studies about international researchers also show. So on the level of higher education institutions, most important is the reputation, is the expertise of the people working there, and also infrastructure. So these are, from my point of view, the most important factors which somehow motivate researchers to go to a certain university. But there's also another factor which I might call something like opportunity structures. So especially for Germany, many international researchers say, okay, they come to Germany because here we have some prestigious scholarships like the ones which have already been introduced, and this is very important. And also some people do not expect to come to Germany, or they do not expect to go abroad. They simply come here because universities offer jobs, and so science is an international business, so it's quite usual to go abroad and not always intended. And yes, what I also can add maybe is that private reasons in general do not play such an important role. So for some people, of course, that's very important, but compared to these other reasons, it plays a minor role.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we can ask somebody who has, in fact, been in this situation. Yeah. Peter Sedlacek, you've been raised in the Czech Republic. You got a master's degree in economics there, then followed a joint European study program, got a PhD, got postdoc, so you went up the whole ladder here, and then you choose the right pathway. You became a junior professor at the University of Bonn in the Department of Economics. So what was your motivation to pursue this career and to get the job here in Bonn?
Okay, I'd like to, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to share my experiences with all of you. It's true, I can kind of corroborate what was said here on both sides. The reason for me why I came to Germany is basically purely based on the reputation of the University of Bonn. So the way it works in economics is probably a little bit special in terms of how people find jobs after their doctorate. And that's because it's actually completely centralized. So there's one period in the year where all doctoral students who finish their PhDs go to one big conference, and then there they have interviews with a bunch of universities and research institutes. So then you're left with, ideally, a couple of options where you can pick from. And for me, the reason to come to Germany was that I knew that University of Bonn is excellent in research-wise, but of course it also plays a role that Germany is, I'd say, a very comfortable place to live in, also personally. So for me, I could say primarily it was research, but also personal reasons are important.
Maybe I can add something, because what I did not mention is also that in our study we focused on the fact that people do not often have only one reason, but they have multiple reasons to come, and so that's, I guess, also typical that there is a certain event, maybe you get to know other people, you have a range of options, and then it's really a set of reasons which yes, pushes you to a certain university. So that's not only reputation, but also that you are well informed about other options, and also maybe something or more soft factors which yes, lead to the final decision to go to a certain or specific place.
Right. Well, now let's take the perspective of an international doctoral researcher who's coming to Germany and wants to pursue a career here. From your experience, what advice would you give him? What should they think about in advance? What should they do here? Who wants to start? Peter.
So I think, so like I said, I'm from economics, and maybe it's a specific field, but unfortunately I don't know anything else. So some of the things that I'll say are maybe only specific to economics. But I think what people should think about when they are choosing a country, or indeed choosing a university where to go to, is to think about what are the possibilities, not only in terms of the career path, but kind of milestones that you could reach within the next 5 or 6 years, or whatever the first kind of term of your employment will be. I think Germany in this sense is particularly good because the possibilities for outside or third-party funding, I think, are quite exceptional. So we've seen the presentation before. There are several, say, publicly financed or public institutions that provide funding, like the DFG, DAAD. But I think what's quite unique is the amount of private institutions or private foundations which support a whole range of research fields. So I myself have had the opportunity, and I was lucky enough to get funding from the Daimler-Benz Foundation, and I'm currently applying for research funding with the European Research Council. And the conditions, I think, in Germany, and especially at the University of Bonn, are excellent because the administration is providing very good help in applying for these programs and getting the funding for you and ultimately for the university as well. So I think you should think about not only kind of the longer term plans, but also what you could achieve in the next couple of years, what the possibilities are.
So what I would suggest to you is go to the best lab you can, to the best group you can. So not only to the best university, but also because a university has many different fields, of course, and go to the best scientists you can. So this can be established people. However, you have then to face a competition in the laboratory, for example. So I'm saying this from a life science perspective. So you have to be self-secure, and you have to take the challenge and do it, right? But you know that since it's the best lab, or one of the best, you know that the topics that you're working with are considered or appreciated internationally, because that's what I'm trying to say. So you're working at the forefront of science. You're not doing me too science, you know this expression, so me too, so me too, so, you know, something repetitive, or, but you're at the forefront. So established people, or alternatively, like my colleague, for example, people starting off, the rising stars, you know, people that start their labs. And the advantage of these laboratories is that you're working very close with the head of the laboratory, right? Or you have a very intimate connection in the sense that you share, you know, this is a real teacher, right? That teaches you things. Whereas in an established lab, you have to, you know, work on your own and try to get the information from other people and try to, you know, often, because the lab heads, Mirko, so I'm maybe more in the established lab, so you have to, you know, it's not very often that you get the lab head to discuss things with him. You have to basically work on this, whereas in a lab, what I described to you as an alternative, right? You have a very close contact to the group leader, and that shapes you as a scientist. So these are the two options. Of course, from my perspective, you have to choose a rising star person who is also in a way at the forefront. So this is what I would suggest to you, and that is independent of Germany. I think this is worldwide what I would.
Thank you.
You know.
Mrs. Wegner, what is your hint for us?
I was just thinking about whether what you just have heard is something which holds true for other research fields. Maybe in humanities or social sciences, situation is somehow different because you do not work in such large groups and their structures might be different. But in general, I think the recommendation is to look for a place which is really top level. I guess it's true for every field, but maybe behavior in different research fields might be different. Yes, so that also depends on the structures because in labs, there have a group leader, you work in a team anyway, and maybe in other fields, I just remember one interview with an international researcher. It might be helpful to establish some kind of mentor relationship. So you work very closely, maybe together with an established researcher, and there it very much depends on your own attitude, so that you proactively try to to establish such a relationship, not just waiting until somebody else will come to you and explain something, so that you actively try to find a person who will support you. I guess that's very important from my point of view.
Thank you very much. Well, Peter Sedlacek, in his answer, mentioned already the vital topic of funding. And when we talk about funding, we especially talk about third-party funding. So, question to you and to Professor Hoch, what's your suggestion? Where should I apply for funding? What are the best sources of third-party funding from your point of view?
Okay, I can start. So I had some experience applying for third-party funding. I think I already mentioned that the support that you get here at the University of Bonn is very good, not only in terms of helping you complete the applications, but actually just informing you about them. So there are many opportunities out there. I would suggest to you to just simply go through the kind of the main public institutions that provide this, as you saw in the previous presentation, because there are many different programs that fit different needs and different individuals. So for instance, the one that I've applied for and recently obtained is this research fellowship that allows you to travel abroad to a different institution for 6 or 12 months and get experience there. And again, I got a lot of support from not only the administration but my colleagues, so that kind of reiterates the need for being in a group, a research group that kind of with which you click and with which you can kind of feedback. And then there's a list of private foundations that, to be honest, I don't even remember how I found that. I think it was just in the newsletter of the university, which regularly circulates, where you can find again a whole list of different programs and different funding schemes that fit particular fields or fit particular individuals.
So I would ask Dr. Six where to get the funding from, because he knows best, or Dr. Impekoven here. So they may help you to think about, to get sources which maybe from the background you have may be appropriate. But what I would do is try to get a fellowship. I mean, if we're talking about PhD students, and the reason, one reason is not only the money issue, right, and your independence that you get if you bring your own fellowship, but also the fact that you have been selected is very important. And this is for your CV. And even if it's not so much money or whatever, I think the fact that you have been going through a selection process will help you in the next stage of the career. And so, what is very important in a scientific career is that you, in a way, get a self-confidence for yourself, that you can do things. And of course, you have to go through a PhD to, at the end, get the feeling that you have taken an important hurdle scientifically, right? You have to go through this first. But I think it's very important to try to get this self-confidence on the way also. And having a fellowship, that helps you to to get this. So this is why I would do it, or try to get it, not only because of the financial issue, but also because it helps you with your CV and your personal attitude.
Professor Hof, I would like to stay with you one more minute, because I think that you are the most experienced writer of grant applications in the room right now. Do you remember how many applications you've written in your academic life?
Oh no, I don't know. I can't
hundreds?
remember.
Hundreds?
No, not so many. It's below 100. Yeah. But yeah, maybe. So don't be worried. Don't be worried. You know, you have still something in advance. No, but you know what I have noticed also, which what is different, you know, in the German system as opposed to the American system, for example, is don't be afraid of failures. Right? We have the tendency to, once we fail, right, to give up easily or to lose your self-confidence or so. No, you just continue. Just do it again. Just go once, you know, develop the next idea and go. And because sometimes, of course, you know, people that judge whether your application, the project is good and so, these are also people that have their personal views. Same is true for acceptance of papers or so, right? You have basically an editor which has been trained somewhere, which has a certain view of things. You present your own science. The editor decides not to send it out for review. He asks, of course, some of the colleagues in the editorial board, but they all think that maybe it's not such a fantastic paper. Don't be disappointed. Send it to a different journal. You know, so this is what I'm trying to say. And often, you know, in my career, it's something has happened that one journal just didn't make the paper didn't make it, you know, over the first hurdle. And in other journals, magically, the thing went through like my colleague says, like a squeezed pig, you know. So in a way, it was much easier, and it depends a little bit on, I mean, on your luck also, and what type of people look at your work. So this is why something, you know, keep on writing grants. Don't be disappointed when you fail. Keep on going.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the pathways to a professorship. We already saw some of the options that you have there. Just to mention a few: habilitation, assistant professorship, junior group leader. There are all sorts of pathways now available. Peter, you choose to become a junior professor. Would you do it again?
I would, because as far as I understand, that's the only path in economics. So. But so I mean, that's actually serious. So I'm very happy with the way things work here. As was said in the presentation, the junior professorship really gives you independence. So I guess I have some bosses, of course, but none of them are telling me what type of research to do or what should I focus on. I do get feedback in terms of what direction I might want to be heading or how well I'm doing and should I improve certain points, but research-wise or topic-wise, I'm fully independent. So from this perspective, I think junior professorship is perfect.
So Professor Hoch, you got a Habilitation. Is that
yes.
still your most favorite way of becoming a professor, or would you see alternatives for you if you started now over?
No. So let's say I have a fantastic job. So I had one, which I had to give up. No. Since so Mirko knows this. You're smiling. No, I have kept my laboratory. So, but of course I have to scale it down. And now, since I have started just with a new job, of course I have PhD students like Mirko and postdocs, where I have had promised, you know, that they can do their PhD in my lab, and of course they can really finish. And so I have to decide at one point, maybe in 2 or so, 3 years from now, how to continue, whether to continue at a low scale. But to have a laboratory to do science this is the most fantastic thing, and I'm very happy that you're saying this. It's not the money that counts in life, because but it's basically the possibility of being creative throughout time, all the time. And I noticed this from people that are now 65 or so, 68. You know, I have to give them then a little document, so they come to my office as a rector's office, and so this is the goodbye document in a way. But most of the people, they keep on acting, you know, having ideas, and they can follow those, you know, even beyond the time of the university. And this is a gift and a present, you know, so in a way. So this is what is fantastic about this job. It's quite tough to get a position. That's the problem, you know. So in a way, we'll come to this. But otherwise, I think this is very good. And the habilitation, that in my opinion, is not really required. So we have this also in our regulations, that you can become a professor without habilitation. So my colleague in the institute, my former colleague, Professor Thiele, for example, is a professor without habilitation. So he came from the Max Planck Society. So that is working also. Habilitation is something which, if you are part of the German system, you know, for example, do your teaching, and so I would recommend to do this along your path, right? Because you need papers and you need teaching things, and so I would recommend to do this. But I'm not sure, or I'm convinced that this is not required for you to become a true scientist. That's not.
Okay. Not everybody obviously can become a professor in our system. When it comes to international researchers, how are their chances of pursuing a career below the professorial level?
So maybe I will. Oh, okay. Maybe I will answer your question in a minute. I just want to add something concerning the different pathways about junior professorships and also about habilitation, because that also very much depends on the research field in which you are working. And from interviews, we know that there are also researchers who are not sure which pathway to choose. And they also said something like habilitation might also be a hidden requirement. So officially it's not required, but in this field it's still typical, and large share of professors has a habilitation, and maybe you might not be accepted. So I just say that, and I want to add that, because it very much depends. Maybe in lab sciences and natural sciences, group leader positions are now very widespread, and maybe this pattern might diffuse also to other research fields, but you should be careful which option to choose. And also about junior professorships, there has been published an evaluation study, I guess just yesterday. Admittedly, it's not very good, but there you can find some information, or maybe some other interviews from junior professorships. It might also depend on the setting. If you are junior professorship or junior professor at an institute which is very small, where you have a lot of teaching to do, and you do not have so much protected space for doing your research, then it might also come along with a lot of problems. So be careful, and also have a look at the setting in which you will try to pursue your career. Not just the position is important, but also the context in which it is positioned. And yes, I have to answer your question, I guess.
Okay.
What was it about?
Below the level of professorship.
Okay, so it has been mentioned, and I very much appreciate what has been said before, and to give you an introduction about these positions. I guess it's not very typical right now, and that's very good tradition to introduce it also to international researchers. And below professorship, that has also been said, there are not so many options within academia. So I really recommend you to take into account options outside of academia. So from studies I know that about 25% of PhD holders only stay at universities. So that's a very large share, and you have to be careful that you do not stay so long in the system and you always expect, okay, my contract is running maybe for 2 years, and there might be another one in the postdoc period and another one, and then you stay too long. And if you do not, do not really have an option to obtain a professorship, then there might be somewhere in the future a point of time where it's very hard to leave the system and to go to another career path. So keep that in mind and try to assess your chances realistically. That's, from my point of view, very important. And consider other options. Maybe in science management, that's an emerging field, and or maybe it's, I don't know. So I just want to mention that you should not wait too long, and always be optimistic, but also be realistic about your chances in the system.
Okay, but looking at it from the beginning, now you've made the decision to pursue an academic career. You want to get your first academic position. What's the best strategy to do so? First of all.
You come out from a fantastic laboratory or a fantastic group, let's say, and I think mathematics, same is true, or economy, same is true. You develop your own ideas, you become a junior professor. It's the first time that you can do science on your own. Publish fantastic papers, no problem to get a job. Right? So this is what I would like to recommend to you. This is why I said you have to go to a very good environment. So because also you will get ideas, you know, what you can do in the future, how you develop your own science, right? So this is what comes from this. And then I think, of course, you need, you know, a lot of engagement and motivation, but it's tough, right? You have to work quite hard. But I think if a creative, you know, element comes with it, I think there's a very good chance that you can produce something, you know, a paper or a book, or depending on which culture you come from, and that will enable you to get a job more easily, right? And to explain to others, to convince a selection committee that it's you who have, you know, has the perspective. So this is what I would try to do, you know, try to really do something exceptional in the scientific world. Now the problem, I see the problem that you have mentioned, that only maybe 20% of the PhD student, I thought it's even less, right? You said 25%. So I thought it's 25% of the postdocs, and it's maybe 10% of the PhD students, so in principle, can make it, will be able to become a professor. At least this is true in Germany, maybe in other, you know, nations it's different. So that means that you need someone, maybe your supervisor, to really give, who gives you how to say, a very realistic judgment whether you can make it or not, right? And that, of course, this is not happening so often, and this is what we have to improve in the system, that at an early stage, right, you can get a feedback, a realistic feedback. Yeah, people know this deep in their heart, they know it, right? But it has to be said. And so pronounced, or it has to be really spoken out, so that it's clear. And then what needs to be done is to be able to focus then, since you know that you're not ending up in academia, that you have to get other, you know, interesting, how to say, qualities, you know, by you know, joining courses and so forth that qualify you for a different path in the society, in media, and so there's a lot of jobs out there which are very interesting, and in fact many people are getting them. But you to get a qualification then also that makes you, you know, better than someone coming from the Cologne University, for example, right? So that is the, in a way, the challenge, and this is what we have to work on in our PhD courses, and this is basically what they are doing in their graduate center, to think about these qualification measures, you know, that people can have in addition to their PhD work. So that is, I think, very important.
Can I maybe add a little bit to that? So I totally agree. I think what should be improved, that's up to the universities and supervisors, is to provide information about what the options are after you graduate. So I also had a feeling that nobody really told me, how difficult it is to find a job afterwards. But on the other hand, I'd also like to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, and you shouldn't freak out. I think this is more actually of a problem of kind of homegrown students rather than international students. We're all foreigners here. We're much more mobile than any of the German PhDs that are here. And I think what you kind of have to open up yourself, and obviously you've already done that because you're here in Germany, is for the possibility to find academic jobs in different countries. And so I think for us it's totally normal because we've studied abroad and we're now here. So I have a feeling that this kind of high pressure, 25% only stay in academia is more relevant for German students who want to stay in Germany, and then that's really tough. But if you're willing to move around, I think the chances are actually quite good. Even if you can't find a nice position in Germany where maybe the market is just not so fluid, you can still find very good jobs in other countries.
Okay. Peter, let me ask you this additional question in this context. When coming to Germany, to the German academic system for the first time, apparently you face one or the other obstacle. So what are the major difficulties that a researcher from abroad has to face when he comes to Germany? Is it language skills or?
So at least in my situation, so language is a little bit of an issue, but not too much. So I teach in English at the master program, PhD level, but German language is necessary for certain aspects of the job. So faculty meetings are in German. Some of the administrative communication is German. But you can always, there's Google Translate. You can kind of get away with it. So I wouldn't say that there's really barriers. It's probably just kind of different culture, which you've probably also seen, right? I think this is an excellent example. Junior, professor, doctor. I mean, right? So I go to a dentist, and they always greet me, Guten Morgen, Herr Professor Sedlacek. Right? So a lot of foreigners are not used to that, this formalism. But I'd say apart from this, I don't see any big impediments for international people to come here and kind of integrate into the academic system.
Once you came here, the question is, can you stay? And that's my question to Mrs. Wagner. How many international researchers have the chance to stay permanently, and is there any trend in the numbers?
So I was a little bit afraid of this question because I cannot provide any figures for that, because there are no studies about how many researchers actually stay in Germany. I can just say that about, let's have a look, took a note about that. Yes, about 1/3 wants to stay in Germany longer than 5 years, but that very much depends on their contracts and their working situation. So people who have a scholarship, they usually only, intend to stay here for maybe 1 or 3 years, so that's very much, or very closely associated to the length of their scholarships. And for those who want to stay permanently, their contract plays a very important role. So of course, those who have fixed-term contracts or have tenure track, they are very much more likely to stay here. So there are no figures about what actually happens, so I just have some figures about their intentions. And yes, maybe what also plays a role, their social integration. So it very much depends on how you feel integrated. So integration in the occupational sphere does not play such an important role, because you are working with other scientists. This is very international. You have a common mindset, and so that's not a problem. But yes, getting into contact with Germans outside of university, that's often a problem for researchers. And that also does not change very much over time. So even people who are here for 5 years, they sometimes only very, very rarely, are in contact with native Germans.
Can I just say that after 3 years of being in Germany, we have many more German native friends than we had after 6 years in Amsterdam. So I think, as a comparison, I think Germany is doing quite fine.
Yeah. Well, this is probably because you're in the Rhineland.
That's what people say. Yeah.
Well, you will probably. We always have it about the Rhineland. Now, back to something serious here. The University of Bonn is a university with a plan, with an internalization strategy, and I'd like to take the chance and ask Rector Hoch, what is the university's strategy towards internalization for the next coming years?
So my strategy is to have good people thinking about the strategy for the university. So this is where I would like to ask Dr. Jamal. Not yet. No, okay. Miss Jamal.
Komm her.
Maybe could you come here?
Können wir ein Mikro haben?
Yeah.
I didn't know that I'm about to say something about it, but okay. I leave the stage. No, I think this is too much for me. He's doing it all
the time.
I think this is a little bit too much for me. No, we are working on a strategy, as you already know, and it's still in progress. There are different parts of the strategy. There are the German courses. There is we have to define which kind of strategic partnerships we would like to have. And of course, all the services for international students and so on. We try to improve these strategies, and this is what we're working on since August.
Yeah. They are doing very good work. So, yeah. So we have a, in the rectorate. So this would be the administrative area. We have a so-called vice rector for international affairs. And so Professor Konermann, and he's involved to think about the strategy of how the university positions itself on the global scale. And it has been mentioned that some key aspect is what could be for the future, the partners, the international partners that we rely on most. Because our university has I think 70 or so MOUs, memorandums of understanding. I thought it's even 100 or so, but I found out it's 70. So that means little letters of intent with universities, which are the basis for exchange of students and so forth. But many of these interactions do not work properly. And this is nothing peculiar, because this happens at every university, and it's not only a German issue but worldwide. And only very few work well. But then that there is really exchange of people, young people, faculty and so forth. And I think what we have to do is we have to concentrate on some of our partners and then invest more. Right? And I described to you one thing that the American and, for example, English universities are doing or have been doing in the last couple of years. What they have been doing, for example, New York University or Duke University or so, they have created partner universities together with China universities, for example, Wuhan, together with Duke University, and so to create new universities, so joint universities in China, as a way to really systematically also teach, train, and then also recruit young Chinese promising student scientists and so to come over to the United States. And the same true for other nations like the United Kingdom and so forth. So this is one strategy, right? So do we want to do this? Well, maybe. And where, we don't know yet, so we have to kind of think about it, where we would invest a little bit more to really concentrate on some of these partners. So this is one of the strategies. But in general, I would appreciate very much if the amount of international students even increases, and we would like to increase the number of colleagues also, international colleagues in the university. And for this we have to you know, alter a little bit also the German type administration, you know, the way you said it, you know that there's a lot of documents still in German. For example, PhD documents, which are only in German, and the international students don't know what's on there, right? So these are the things which we have to change, right? And so we are about to start to look at this and systematically try to change this, but it takes a little while, yeah, but we are on track.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have a quick look with the organizers. We'll open up the session now and give you the opportunity to ask questions too. I think we only have these 3 hand microphones here, so we'll have to share them. Yeah. Thank you very much. So now it's to you now to ask questions to anybody here on stage. What are your questions? Be brave. Ask the first question. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, first of all, for the nice dialogue. I have a question for Mr. Six, actually. The German terms for the junior professor and for the habilitation and so on are not clear for me, because I hear of Privatdozent, and I hear of contracts like C1, C2, and C3, and it would be helpful for us to know them in German as well as in English for the application in future.
Okay. To answer this briefly, the Privatdozent is a person who obtained habilitation but hasn't obtained a professorship yet. So he's kind of in the limbo between. The C1, 2, 3, or it's rather nowadays the W1, 2, 3 positions are different. Different categories of the income of professors. So there's different junior professors earn the W1. It's kind of what's it called? A salary scheme, yeah? And then there's the W2 and W3 is something that's divided among full professors. So there are professors with the W3 salary, which is the highest, and others with the W2, which is between 1 and 3. So yeah, but the W and the C questions are questions of salary scheme. No, not at all.
Actually, that's a historic term, dates back to the 19th century. People who got their habilitation, but not a professorship yet, they would stay at the university. And at that time, they would fund themselves just privately by taking money from people who wanted to hear their lectures. Kind of an awkward system from a nowadays perspective, but that's where the term Privatdozent stems from, and they still use it, but it does not have this meaning anymore in terms of the funding of these people. They are still part of the academic system, but they are not professors yet.
Maybe one addition. So for these different categories of professorships, it's not only the salary, but it's the staff positions that come with each professorship. So the number of technicians, secretarians, this staff positions vary, and also the budget that the professorships have, the basic budget that is different between the categories. But I think the W1 in economics, they earn a lot of money, right?
Because then they know how to negotiate well. Further questions? The lady in pink.
Yeah, thank you very much for your tips. I found very interesting what you mentioned. If we don't want to pursue career in academia or a professorship, how to get these qualifications? Does the university offer something? Or how can we get this qualification, for example, to go to industry? Because I think the link between academia and industry is very far away. So how can we reach this?
Professor It's a question for Dr. Impekoven. He's the head of the, that's the think tank, which thinks about training young people and getting them into, onto certain career paths. So So there's a couple of options which are offered already by your Dezernat, right?
Yeah, maybe I start and Kai Six can add a few comments if he would like to. As it's actually part of our strategy that we are in the process of developing, how we can support junior research staff for careers outside of academia. And we actually started this only last year with the Promotion Plus concept, where we offer together with our partners in the career development office and other institutions within the university to offer courses for PhD students to get them additional qualifications that Rector Hoch mentioned earlier on, which are very important for you. So if you're not aware of this program yet, please do visit our website, phd.uni-bonn.de, and there you'll find a whole lot of opportunities, which we hope to increase in the near future.
Okay. Further questions?
Maybe as a strategy which we are taking right now, you know, we have a couple of companies here around in Bonn, for example, were globally acting like telecom, or you know, but also companies that would belong to what we call in German the Mittelstand, which are medium-sized or you know, companies where Germany in general is very strong. And so the idea would be to find out by contacting them what they need as a profile for a person. And this is a process which I have to also be involved in, because I have to contact them, try to connect, and then you know, try to do this personally. So because then it's easier, you know, to have the connections from the heads to the heads or so. And but this would be an idea to really get a little bit, you know, more concretely, you know, what type of a profile persons would need that come out from these universities that would have a chance to get later on a job with telecom, so that they do not take the person coming from Berlin or Munich. Yeah. So this would be the challenge and also, let's say, the type of career development that we would like to take in the future. But we have only started to really do this systematically. So.
And also maybe to add one more thing, it always depends on your particular field. I don't know what your field is. Life sciences. Well, that's ideal in many ways, because I don't know if it was earlier this year or late last year. We did something together with a company from Bonn, actually, about data science and how important that is, and how much more important will become for industry. So all those of you who are working on projects where they deal with data, big data, there are brilliant prospects for you out there.
Yeah. As we just heard, there are some new programs in the making, actually. Some are already there. And you have the great opportunity tonight to influence what's going to happen in the near future, just by talking to my colleagues here and asking them exactly questions like these, and to point them into the direction that you want to go and where you think you need support. And that's also one reason why we are here. All right, so are there more questions over there?
Firstly, thank you very much for these informative talks. I have a question related to the scholarships, postdoc scholarships, namely. As most of us know, or that you as professors and postdocs know, there are many postdoc availabilities, like the DAAD prime program or DFG, the own position and so on. But most of these scholarships and fellowships actually require that you have to have a third partner outside. For example, the 2 years postdoc, you have to have 1.5 years outside, and then half year in your university. So how could the university administratively help actually in this respect, that they could allow or actually accept that you reintegrate again after your scholarship, for example, at the University of Bonn and so on?
Tough question. Thank you. But so, you know, so I think what you would have to do is to first discuss that with the supervisor of the laboratory, because he knows the colleagues over there. For example, you mentioned New York, for example, the group that is where exchange or where let's say your part of your career will then take place, and the PhD or postdoc supervisor then can contact the university administration, and I would contact the international office in this context, and Dr. Impekhofen also, so that you basically, if there is a question of administrative that considers administration, you might find some specific help, but there is no, let's say, general program of the university to enable this type of fellowship structure, as far as I know. But maybe the colleagues know more about this.
Yeah, thanks. To add up on this, I think we've made very successful experiences with the DAAD Prime program, for example, and it turned out that it's much more difficult to actually get the funding from the DAAD, because it's a very competitive and popular program, than to realize the 6-month stay back at Bonn University, which is normally something that is somehow arranged also because this program is so prestigious. Then lab leaders might say, okay, of course I will give you the half-year contract that comes at the end of this scholarship. So normally this shouldn't be the most difficult thing about realizing this. So just as the rector said, you go to your supervisor, and then between the supervisor, the international office, and us, there's something that can be made out for that. But the real difficulty is to get the external funding, because it's really a popular program, I would say.
Have a quick look. Are there further questions? Of course, you have many opportunities to ask further questions directly to these people later on, because now we will move on to the coffee break, give you all the opportunity to mix and mingle, and then please come back at 4:30. Come back here, and then we'll explain the rules of the World Cafe that is then following up. Thank you very much. And thank you very much